So, after 14 videos, we finally reached the modern era of Tales games, with a game which, up until now, has held the spot as my favourite game in the entire Tales franchise. However, it's been over 5 years since I last played the game, and I have recently played and reviewed 14 other Tales games in depth. Now it's time to take a critical look at this game to see if it can hold up to my nostalgic memories. Without further ado, let's dive into 2011's Tales of Xillia for the PlayStation 3. And yes, I will be calling it Xillia and not Xillia because that sounds stupid. Now just a reminder that this Tales of Xillia retrospective is brought to you by my lovely patrons like Cameron Strauss and newcomer Black Liquid SRW. For as little as $3 a month, you can get your name shouted out at the start of every Xenosegment video, as well as access to bonus behind the scenes content, link in the description below. After what can only be described as a golden decade for the Tales franchise, things were beginning to change around the Namco Tales studio and Bandai Namco as a whole. The two-team model, which had seen the series pump out new releases every year from 2002 onwards, was starting to become redundant in the face of increasing development workloads. By 2010, Team Symphonia had already helped out Team Destiny in both Tales of Hearts and Tales of Graces, and in return Team Destiny would help out Team Symphonia with their next Tales game. The year 2010 would mark the series' 15th anniversary, and it was quickly decided that the next game should be an anniversary title to celebrate this moment in the series. It was also around this time that Sony's PlayStation 3 had finally gotten over its initial launch hurdles and was quickly becoming a highly successful console. Along with this, Bandai Namco had also been impressed with the sales figures of the PlayStation 3 ports of Tales of Vesperia and Tales of Graces, thus the team felt confident to develop this new game exclusively for the PlayStation 3. This would be the first new mainline Tales game made exclusively for a PlayStation console since Tales of the Abyss in 2005. As an anniversary title, the team really wanted to push the series to new heights with some dramatic changes. The first would be the introduction of free camera movement across the entire game world as opposed to just the overworld. The second would be a dramatic change to the game's visuals. With Tales of Vesperia, there was a general feeling that the team had maxed out the potential of the series' classic cel-shaded art style. Thus, for the series to continue to evolve, the series needed to embrace a more ambitious art direction. This move to more ambitious visuals would coincide with the team parting ways with longtime collaborators Production IG, instead of seeking help from Ufotable, who just finished working on the first God Eater game, also published by Bandai Namco. Much like with the previous games, Hideo Baba would return as producer, while Tales of Hearts director Naoto Miyadera would return to direct. With the game's development involving people from both Tales teams, it made sense to bring on Tales of Symphonia's Kosuke Fujishima and Destiny's Mutsumi Inamata on board to design the characters. The two would split the character designs up between themselves, with Fujishima design the male lead of Jude, while Inamata would design the female lead of Mila. As for the story side of things, Daisuke Kiga would be joined by a myriad of other writers, including Vesperia's writer Takashi Hasegawa, to craft a plot around the determination of the main cast to see their mission through, and thus the characteristic genre chosen would be RPG of unwavering convictions. As for the game's name, the team liked the idea of the many events the cast would encounter, and thus were attracted to the English slang word zillion, used to describe extremely large numbers. Thus, the name Tales of Xillia would be chosen as the game's name, with the Z now replaced by an X. Alongside the previously stated reason, the team also liked how Xil looked like 13 in Roman numerals, which would also coincide with Xillia being the 13th mainline title. Excuse me for 1 second. Getting back on topic, as the game neared completion, it was becoming clear that the game would not hit its 2010 release window, instead being delayed into 2011. This made 2010 the first year since 2001 in which no new mainline Tales games were released. Despite the delay, the challenge of the new art and presentation direction meant that the team still found themselves under pressure. This would result in several major changes, including the dumping of 2 playable characters, as well as major cutbacks in the game's third act. Despite all the challenges in development, the game was set for a 2011 release. Bandai Namco had first teased the game in the July 2010 issue of Weekly Shonen Jump, before later revealing the game in full in the later December issue. Over the course of the next few months, the game's cast and details would be revealed via the game's official website. In May, the game's release date of the 8th of September 2011 would be announced alongside a Xillia-themed PS3. In March of the following year, the game would be announced on Twitter for NTSC and PAL territories, likely taking everyone who just bought Tales of Grace's F by surprise. 8-4 would once again be called on to handle the localization, like they did with Tales of Vesperia, while Cup of Tea Productions would handle the dubbing. Despite the relatively quick localization announcement in comparison to the previous Tales of Graces, Tales of Xillia wouldn't end up releasing in Western territories until August 2013. With fans intrigued by this new art style of Tales game, could Tales of Xillia live up to expectations? Now, Tales of Xillia is rather unique in the fact that the story can be viewed from the point of either of the two main protagonists, thus I will try my best efforts to merge both perspectives into one for this recap. The story takes place in the world of Riza Maxia, a world where humans have the ability to channel the power of spirits to perform magical arts. However, things are not going all as well, as we see a young lady determining that the spirits of the land are dying and heads off to the city of Fenmont to stop the source of the spirits' destruction. Meanwhile in Fenmont we meet Jude Mathis, a medical student working on his honours thesis. After a long day at the hospital, Jude is informed that his supervisor, Professor House, has won a prestigious award. Excited by the news, Jude travels to meet the professor at the Laforte Research Centre. At the centre, Jude is confused to learn from the guards that the professor has already left and suspects something is amiss after comparing his sign-out signature. While Jude ponders what's going on, he suddenly notices the young woman walking across the water on some special glyphs towards a drainage pipe underneath the research centre. Intrigued by this mysterious person, Jude uses the glyphs to follow the woman into the facility. Inside, Jude discovers a room full of human test subjects in vats. One of the test subjects turns out to be Professor House, who's vaporized before Jude's eyes. Horrified and in shock of what he has just seen, Jude is suddenly faced by an insane lady dressed in a red dress. Being cornered by the lady, Jude is about to be killed when the young woman from earlier bursts in and using the power of the four great spirits takes out the lady in red. Thanking the woman for helping him out, Jude and the woman introduce themselves. The woman claims to be Mila Maxwell, the Lord of Spirits, who has taken on a physical form to stop humans developing dangerous weapons which kill spirits. Jude, who now feels in debt to the woman, offers to stick with Mila to help her out. Figuring that Jude has minimum effort to look after, Mila agrees and the two make their way towards the centre of the facility. There, the two discover the Lancer Kresnik, a giant spirit-absorbing superweapon. Mila summons the four great spirits to destroy the weapon, however she is suddenly stopped when the lady in red shows up again and activates the weapon. In an attempt to save Mila, the four spirits seal themselves inside the cannon to shut it down, while Mila herself steals the weapon's key. Both Mila and Jude are then blown out of the research centre after the room with the cannon begins to collapse. Now outside, the two are suddenly confronted by guards. Mila attempts to fight them off but finds herself helpless without the power of the four great spirits. Seeing her in trouble, Jude steps in and fights off the guards himself. Realising the two are now wanted criminals, they rush off to the seaport where they are able to get on a departing ship thanks to the help of the shady mercenary Alvin. On the ship, the three introduce themselves to each other. Alvin reveals that he helped the two under the impression that they'd want to hire him as a bodyguard. The two unfortunately reveal that they do not have much money. However, Mila decides to take on Alvin's offer, with the promise to pay him if he can escort her back to her hometown of Nia Kera, where she hopes to perform a ritual to summon back the four great spirits. And the story continues from there as we follow Mila on a mission to recover the four great spirits and destroy the Lancer Kresnik. For the full story breakdown, we're actually lucky enough to have Oni Blackmage back, as he's done a recap of this game's story, which you could check out in the link below. Straight from the get-go, Tales of Xillia completely overhauls the classic look that we've come accustomed to with previous 3D Tales games. Instead, we now have much more detailed character designs that really try to push the series to more advanced visuals. Unfortunately, as the first game to use this new style, Xillia definitely hasn't aged the best. Characters' faces, for one, seem to lack the ability to express the same level of emotions that characters in Vesperia and Graces could. The game also has a noticeable haze in a lot of areas, making the game appear less bright and vibrant compared to past entries. While Xillia has some issues with graphical presentation, it more makes up for it in its graphical design. I love the new, more detailed looks to the characters. In fact, I'd go as far as to say this is my favourite looking cast in the entire series. I can't really say why I love the character design so much. Perhaps it's the more cool look of the cast over the more cutesy look of past games, but I really cannot say. What I can say though is that the new style of the game really does help in making this game feel like the next evolution in Tales games, even the new style really won't come into its own until Tales of Zestiria. Alongside the new art style, the other major change is the introduction of free camera movement in both towns and dungeons, as opposed to just in the overworld. Alongside the free camera, we also have a couple of first-person moments when the party crawls through crevices. While the free camera is a nice addition, it has come at the cost of several drawbacks. To prevent the camera getting stuck in walls, towns and dungeons now have much wider paths, resulting in things feeling more spaced out and not as detailed as they were in previous Tales games. This is especially true in the overworld, where we once again have field dungeons. However, unlike Grace's bright and vibrant field dungeons, Xillia dungeons are mostly cut and copied valleys with minimal coloured distinctions to identify them. This, in my opinion, is one of Xillia's worst aspects, as it brings back all the worst parts of Hearts' field dungeons, along with somewhat making the free camera pointless as there are no views for the player to enjoy. What makes these garbage field dungeons even more disappointing is the fact that other areas of the game look so good. The Kajara Sea Falls, for one, is a beautiful location that is a joy to journey through, and it leaves me wondering why more locations couldn't look like this. While the field dungeons are a disappointment, the actual dungeons and towns are incredible, with the exception of the copy and pasted seaports. In fact, Fenmont is arguably my favourite city across all of JRPGs I have played, as I just love the night lit treehouses sticking out of the lake below. Alongside Fenmont, I also like the new oriental aesthetics given to the towns in Arjul, with buildings there often taking cultural cues from not just Japan, but China and Mongolia too. For a series made in Japan, I am surprised the team has yet to make a game with an oriental aspect, as normally they just stick it all in one single town. Staying on the topic of towns, to quickly get between these towns, Tales of Xillia ditches the classic flying craft in return for a simple quick travel option. Players can now simply open the map and jump straight to a town or dungeon of their choosing. While this is no different from how Grace's did quick travel, the thematic lack of a flying craft is an unfortunate loss, and I can see why some people didn't like its removal. While the simplest quick travel system is not to everyone's liking, I do like how it helps speed up the story, which can be quite slow at the start. Playing this game for the first time in years, I've forgotten just how slow the game starts, with the player being stuck with a party of 3 well into the game's 5th hour before a 4th member is unlocked. This is rather annoying for one hoping to play the game in a group of 4, although as we'll see later, the game fundamentally is unplayable for a party bigger than 2. Speaking about these other characters, joining Mila and Jude on their journey, we have the orphan Elise Lutus, who the cast somewhat adopt into the party. Alongside Elise, we also have a talking doll Tipo, who challenges Tales of Legendia's Norma as the most annoying character in the series. On the more likeable side, we have the friendly butler Rowan J. Ilbert, who at 62 might possibly be the oldest Tales character, ignoring near immortal elves and spirits. Finally finishing up this small 6-man cast is Leia Rolando, a childhood friend of Jude, who brings along a lot of energy to the party with her upbeat personality. Much like with the character designs, I love the character dynamics too. After the pretty weak cast of Hearts and Graces, Xillia brings arguably the strongest cast since Tales of the Abyss. Xillia's cast really excels in how they play off each other as the story progresses, with all of them evolving as characters over the course of the adventure. A great example of this comes in the form of the 2 leads, Jude and Mila. Jude is a man who has humanity but lacks power and conviction. Meanwhile, Mila has power and conviction but lacks humanity. Over the course of the plot, they both learn from each other, with Jude gaining the strength to fight what he believes in, while Mila learns the importance of helping those in need. Character interactions also benefit from new anime cut-ins both inside and outside of combat, alongside the classic Symphonia box-style skits. These new cut-ins are a nice way of allowing the characters to talk with each other while not pausing your game. As for character progression in the gameplay side of things, Tales of Xillia might possibly have one of the simplest progression systems in the series in the form of the Lilium Orb. These flower-shaped orbs consist of 6 strands that branch out to form a giant spiderweb structure. Each strand corresponds to your character's strength, vitality, agility, intelligence, psyche, and dexterity. Upon level ups, your character will receive growth points, or GP, which can then be assigned to one of these 6 strands to improve your character's stats in that area. By connecting these strands, the characters can gain additional arts and skills located in between. Speaking about these skills, we once again have the return of Vesperia style skill system, in which unlocked skills will cost a certain amount of skill points to equip, thus preventing you having all skills attached at once. Character growth isn't the only simple stat to customise, as cooking has also been simplified to the point where it practically no longer exists. Instead, the party can buy pre-made foods from food shops. While some people might be upset at the lack of cooking, I actually quite like this new approach. I know, based. To me, cooking was always kind of asinine, having to find the right ingredients only to have your meal fail to cook, often maybe quickly give up on the mechanic. Meanwhile here, not only is it easy to grab a meal of your choice, the party will also make subtle comments when the previous meal effect is worn off, that they're ready to eat the next bunch of food. On the topic of food shops, Tales of Xillia has a rather unique shopping system. Unlike previous games where shops and towns in the late game have better equipment than early ones, Xillia has all shops sell the same equipment. Now to get better gear, the party must first donate either scavenged material or money to shops of their choice to upgrade them. This technically means the party can upgrade a shop right at the start of the game to give them the late game equipment, although they'll be at it for a while finding every single monster in sight. Speaking about combat, for combat, Tales of Xillia merges the battle systems of Graces and Vesperia to give us the double raid linear motion battle system, or DRLMBS. Like in past games, combat is initiated by walking into monsters in the overworld. However, without the Sorcerer's Ring, we now have the ability, like monsters, to trigger advantage encounters by walking into the backs of monsters. Once in combat, you'll find, like in Vesperia, we once again have a side camera angle, as well as the control scheme associated with that angle. However, we now have a Graces style CC system in the form of the assault counter. AC works much in the same way as CC, with it being depleted by actions and leaving your character unable to act once completely depleted. However, AC has a couple of differences. For one, AC will immediately recharge after taking no action, rather than slowly filling up like in Graces. Another difference is in the fact that all actions now cost 1 AC, from stepping to arts to regular attacks, which make their return after being dropped in Graces. Instead, to limit you from spamming arts, Xillia brings back technical points after their absence in hearts and Graces. Due to actions costing 1 AC to use, and AC often being very abundant, Xillia in some respects allows for a very spammy playstyle, in which characters can easily throw out 8 to 10 hits of the same attack. This unfortunately removes a lot of the challenge present in previous games like Vesperia and Graces when it comes to playing optimally, as the game is rather lenient in the attacks you can make. While I still think Xillia stays true to the series' roots of fighting game battle systems, I can see the start of the series descending into more simplistic combat styles, which I loathe in the later entries. Now it's time I talk about the DRLMBS's key mechanic of linking. During battle, you are able to link up with other party members by pressing the button on the D-pad corresponding to the party member you want to link with. Linked party members will be indicated on the screen with a blue or green line. The linked party member will then run over to assist you in taking down the monster you are targeting. This makes linking a great way for other characters to assist you as you hack away at the enemies. However, linking can also do a bunch of other things. Linked characters will share all status ailments, both positive and negative. This means if one character gets an attack buff, the linked partner will also get an attack buff. This also means that if a character gets poisoned, the linked partner will also be poisoned. Linked characters will also share certain skills with each other in combat, indicated by this green logo. While linked, characters will build up the link gauge displayed on the side of the screen. When the gauge hits 20%, you unlock the ability to perform a link art. To use a link art, you must first use an art that corresponds to an art of the party member you are linked with. When you use such a trigger art, a gold symbol will appear on your character. When the symbol appears and you press R2, you will perform a linked art in which the art you just used will be merged with the linked party member's art in a powerful combination attack. Once a link art is fired off, you can then build up the gauge another 20% and repeat the process. When the gauge reaches 100% and you perform a link art, you will activate Overlimit. In Overlimit, your AC gauge will not deplete and you'll be able to perform an unlimited amount of link arts. In fact, using a triggered art during a link art will immediately perform that art's corresponding link art straight away. Until Overlimit wears off, you can keep chaining link arts and Overlimit as long as each trigger hasn't previously been used in the combo. Alongside unlimited link arts, Overlimit also allows the characters to perform mystic arts by using arcane arts while holding X. With linking putting much greater focus on your team's synergy, Tales of Xillia now allows the party to switch out active party members with bench party members while in mid-battle. This feature is a really nice quality of life addition as it allows you to switch out near-death party members for healthy ones. It also allows you to optimize your team to best take down enemies as you quickly find certain characters better at taking down specific types of enemies. This is driven in part due to the unique and special partner skills each character possesses. Going over to the individual characters, we have Jude, who joins Sentinel Coolidge as one of the only two Tales protagonists to use his fists over a sword in combat. As a fist fighter, Jude is able to deal out rapid twin strikes with his fists while at the same time possessing a handful of healing arts like previous fist fighters of Vara and Regal. Jude's special skill is Snap Pivot, in which a successful attack avoiding backstep will cause him to teleport behind the enemy for increased damage. Meanwhile, Jude's partner skill Restore will cause him to heal you whenever you get knocked down by a monster. This makes Jude a great partner to link with when fighting power type monsters who knock you down a lot. With Jude going down the Legendia route, Mila keeps the classic formula of single-wield sword protagonists. Despite being a sword fighter, Mila actually lacks many sword arts, and this is in part driven by her special skill Spirit Shift. Throughout the game, Mila will learn for the most part a bunch of offensive spells. These spells can be fired off normally by holding down circle on the controller. However, if you instead tap circle, you instead fire off a weaker art of the same element. This makes Mila both viable as a caster and physical fighter. Alongside her spells, Mila is a solid air fighter that can also call the 4 great spirits for additional elemental attacks. While linked, Mila's partner skill is Bind, in which you'll freeze enemies in place, allowing you to hit them with impunity. This makes Mila a good partner to deal with speedy enemies who often move too fast to hit. In contrast to Jude and Mila's fast playstyle, Alvin takes on the role as the slower tank type fighter. Using his large broadsword, Alvin is able to perform powerful slash attacks to push enemies away before blasting them at range with his gun. When using arts, if the player continues to hold circle down after the art, Alvin will use his special skill Charge, in which he will merge his gun and sword into one weapon. In a charge state, Alvin will have increased stats and will perform powerful versions of his regular arts at the cost of losing the charge state. Alvin's partner skill is Breaker, in which he will break the defences of enemies, allowing you to get around the tanky nature of specific guard type enemies. Going from a tank to more of a glass cannon, we have Elise, who takes on the role as the primary healer. Elise uses a rod to focus on dark and restorative spells, as well as a few physical arts. Elise's special skill is Tipo switching, in which she can toggle having Tipo either on her shoulder or orbiting around her. While on her, Elise's spells will be strengthened, Mila will offer physical arts will instead be strengthened. While this does somewhat make Elise similar to Mila, her lack of physical attacks making having Tipo off kinda useless, as you should probably be using another character if you want to do physical fighting. As for a partner skill Tipo Drain, Tipo will periodically drain the target of TP and HP and then give it to both you and Elise. This makes Elise best suited against technical type enemies who use arts a lot, as Tipo Drain will continuously interrupt them. We also have Rowan, who, despite wielding a saber, is the group's primary caster, with him using his sword as a conductor's stick to control the spells as if he would conduct a band. This musical theme comes across in both Rowan's arts and special skill, Art Tuning, in which whenever he casts a spell, the player can then follow a series of button prompts to adjust the spell's power and movement. As for his partner skill, Rowan will automatically give your characters Magic Guard whenever they are hit by a spell. This makes Rowan a great partner against magic type monsters who cast a lot of spells. Finally, we have Leia, who gives us our first ever quarterstaff user. Being child friend of Jude, Leia shares a lot of arts, although having a unique quarterstaff spin. She's also able to use most of her arts in the air, resulting in being able to do this hilarious action. She also has a bunch of recovery and buffing skills. Her special skill is Elongating Staff, which, like Jude, is triggered by perfectly backstepping an enemy attack. Following this, for a short time her staff will grow in length, giving her more powerful attacks over longer range. Her partner skill is Item Steal, in which, as the name suggests, allows her to periodically steal items. This is great against strange type monsters who often have good items on them. It's also good against certain bosses who use items like apple gels and even life bottles to heal one another. And that is a basic summary of the combat and tales of Xillia. While not as technical as Grace's style shift from the emotion battle system, battles are still fun to conduct thanks to AC, allowing for easy combos, combined with discovering the plethora of linked art combinations. Composing the music for Tales of Xillia, we once again have Matoe Sakuraba. However, his colleague Shinji Tamura is strangely absent after the two had worked together for 15 years. In fact, unless this wiki article is incorrect, Xillia would mark the end of Tamura's involvement in the series, as he has not composed the soundtrack to any new Tales games, instead only working on a handful of ports and remakes. Despite working alone, Sakuraba was likely able to make use of the extended development window in composing the music to this game, and this has resulted in a really solid soundtrack. After the disappointment that was Grace's soundtrack, Xillia truly does bring the series soundtrack back to the heights of the mid-2000s. Xillia is able to bring back a unique musical identity that Grace's was lacking, but predominantly sticking to two styles. The first of these styles is the classic wind and string riffs, which are used for the locations in Rushigal, as well as the themes of Mila and Jude. The second and far more interesting style is the Oriental style music played for locations in Aljul. Much like how it was nice to see Oriental themed locations in the game, it's also really nice to hear Oriental style music. Alongside the music in the overworld, we also have some pretty awesome battle themes. Both Jude and Mila's side of the story gets unique regular battle themes which evolve as the game progresses, like in games past. For the most part, Jude's battle theme centers around the electric guitar, while Mila's battle theme is focused around a solo violinist. Alongside the regular battle themes, we also have some pretty amazing boss themes such as Believe in Me, which is definitely one that gets stuck in my head a lot. While I don't think Xillia quite reaches the heights of Abyss's soundtrack, it's definitely contention for my second spot against Rebirth and Vesperia. Alongside the return of a solid soundtrack, we also have the return of a solid English voice cast.
It snowed last night, it snowed last night. Mila and the four had a pillow fight.
Okay, while not perfect, Xillia is definitely a step in the right direction when it comes to well-acted performances. Ironically, the best voice performance probably has to go to Matthew Mercer, who voices Alvin. Despite not being the main character, Mercer is able to give Alvin the same level of swagger that Baker gave Yuri, along with the same level of emotional changes later in the game. However, Alvin is not the only incredible character, as we have great voice performances from all the main characters, and that includes Minaya Noji as the voice of Mila. I know Noji's performance has come under fire from some as being too robotic and unemotional, but to me that's the point, as Mila is not exactly human. Also, Noji is very much able to bring out Mila's more emotional side in the late game. To sum up, I never once found any of the characters' voice performance jarring and taking me out of my immersion like the voice actors in Grace's did, and I feel like Xillia's voice cast should get more respect for the work they did. Well, I praise the soundtrack and voice actors, but I've saved my biggest praise to last, and that is for the opening cinematic. Japanese singer and songwriter Ayumi Hamasaki would be brought on to perform the game's opening song, Progress, which from the moment I've heard it has become my favourite opening song in the series. Just listen to it. This incredible song is complemented by an equally incredible opening cinematic. As their first opening cinematic, Ufotable completely hits it out of the park with this fast-paced and energetic opening. While I love the work Production IG has done on past games, not one of them comes remotely close to delivering the same level of emotional height that this opening does. In fact, I kid you not, it was watching this opening on YouTube which got me to immediately buy this game and a PlayStation 3. Quite frankly, no other Tales opening has been able to do that, so it's no surprise when I say that this is my favourite opening of any Tales game in the series. So, do I still think Tales of Xillia is the best game in the series? Well, playing the game again has definitely opened my eyes to the numerous faults of this game. After games like Vesperian Graces challenge you to optimally time your attacks and dodges, Xillia does somewhat return to the more spammy playstyles of games like Legendia. Boss fights are really not much fun at all on hard difficulty, as they are total sponges, taking next to no damage even from characters decked out with top gear. I'm also not a fan of how linking disrupts multiplayer, as when linked the partner character will be completely AI controlled, even if a player is set to them. This basically makes Xillia a two-player game, as 3 or 4 players will disrupt linking, preventing you from being able to unleash your powerful link darts and mystic arts. I also feel like I should raise the issue that, after we've gotten 14 games with male leads, to finally get a female lead who has to share the spotlight with another male lead is not the best look for a series who's got quite a large female fanbase. Also add on the fact that Mila's story feels kind of less developed than Jude's. However, the biggest issue the game faces is how unfinished it is. I do have to commend the Tales team for a really decent job of making the game feel finished, but it's still clear that it's missing features. For a start, link arts are massively skewed towards Jude and Mila, with the other 4 party members only having a few linked arts between them. The fun length of the story is also one of the weakest in the series, with the plot noticeably sputtering out around the 35-hour mark. However, in this game's defense, a lot of Tales games have poor final chapters. In fact, it's the ones with solid final acts that are the anomaly. Arguably the most noticeable aspect which shows off how much the game was rushed has to be the post-game content, or should I say lack thereof. Xillia lacks any form of cameo fight against the previous game's protagonist, despite a feature being a staple of past games. The game also lacks things to do outside a simple Fell Arms quest to get the best weapons in the game. While this might be a boon to some 100% completionists, I can also understand why others might be feeling ripped off due to the lack of things to do with your decked out max level party. Personally, I don't really dive into the post games of most JRPGs I play, and that might be a reason why Xillia's biggest downside doesn't bother me that much. With all the negatives out of the way, let's talk about why I still love this game so much. While it's yet to find its footing, I still love the new art style. The new more detailed looks to the world is awesome, and I still can't express why I love the designs of the characters so much in this game. Not only do the characters look great, they act great too. Xillia's cast, much like Vesperia's cast, is once again able to keep me interested in the game during the story's much slower moments, thanks in part to a solid voice cast and character personalities. Also, while I have dissed a bit on the combat, if I can say one thing about it that I like, it has to be how open it is. The DRLBS is a combat system which lets you play however you feel without any restrictions, and I do like this level of freedom that the combat offers. So once again I ask myself, is Xillia the best game in the series? Well, I still think it's a contender against my other favourites of Vesperia and Berseria, but I'm definitely more mixed on it than I was before. The notable lack of content from a rushed development has definitely hindered my enjoyment in this playthrough, and the combat definitely isn't as good as some of the other past games. Well, let's see if my issue with the game can be fixed in the next game. With Tales of Xillia being a rushed game, the team found that it had a lot of leftover content. Rather than scrapping this content and moving on to a new Tales game, the team would instead pursue a sequel to follow up and hopefully exceed Xillia, which is what we'll be talking about next time when I look back at 2012's Tales of Xillia 2 for the PlayStation 3.